India is booming. 1.2 billion people who need everything from new roads and hospitals to shopping malls, health insurance to renewable energy. The opportunities are limitless. But as with everything, there is a flip side. The bureaucracy and the red tape, as we all know, can be extremely difficult. The uncertainty about regulations governing business can also be a difficult area. The actual process of setting up and running a business in India can often be excruciatingly difficult. And that's given rise to a whole new industry, the business of the conclave.
It has been said that there is no big bang or shock treatment to have a market-driven model. That's one theme of criticism which has been coming out about the Indian budget. I believe these will come, but they will really start coming when the poor in India, and as we know, a very significant number of Indians are still extremely poor, have begun to be lifted above poverty and can actually absorb the pace of change. And hence, there are moves for financial inclusion steps to improve housing, health, insurance schemes, and education. And as the Prime Minister has quoted, he says it's moving from Jan Dhan to Jan Kalyan, which means from people's money to people's welfare. And Jan Dhan is an experiment in making sure people have bank accounts with all the kind of technology we heard about. And in short order, this was announced, I think, in September last year. 100 million people who didn't have bank accounts now do. They may be starting on zero, they may be starting with a very small account, but they are going to get linked in. And as we heard about the pace of the telecom revolution with the smartphones, the mobile phone is now virtually ubiquitous in India. There was a time when I think about 10 years ago, a couple of million people, 10, 15 years ago, a couple of million people had access to a telephone. There was a time you had 120 new mobile phones being added every year. And we have crossed 1 billion.
In the last few years, we've had a surge in the number of conclaves and conferences taking place around the world. Here in London, for instance, just in the last 6 months, we've had events that are focused on various different sectors of the Indian economy. We've had infrastructure, pharmaceuticals, the education sector, biotechnology even. All of these events offering advice, expertise, and access to one of the world's largest, most exciting economies. And this is the latest. It is organized by the India Club at the London Business School, and fittingly enough, it's called Indiapreneurship, offering advice on how to do business in India. Let's go find out more.
So I think it is the right time to go to India because it is on the move. It should be the fastest growing major economy next year, 8% growth. It is democratically run, and it has a huge demographic dividend. The median age in India is well below that of China. China in a few years is going to be aging much more rapidly than it is now. So the other point is that India is increasing its integration into the global economy, but it is getting globalized without entirely losing its own identity.
We are here with two of the organizers of the Indiapreneurship event, Muthu Murugappan and Nav Kapleesh, playing various different roles within the organizing committee. Muthu, first to you. Tell me the thinking behind Indiapreneurship and the kind of the reasoning behind why you decided that this needs to be done now.
So the India Business Forum is a business school conference, London Business School's flagship India conference. We thought that this year, as business students, we learn so many business strategies and business frameworks in class. We thought that we'd have real life stories this year. And we thought what better way to bring that to life than through an entrepreneurial theme, which is why we chose the theme Indiapreneurship. And I guess it also tied into the fact that there's a big emphasis being laid on entrepreneurship by the new Modi government. Yeah. I think you are going to have a lot of small and medium enterprise and entrepreneurs building the new India in many years to come. So that's why we sort of chose this theme.
What are the kind of challenges? I mean, it's essentially a forum for people to come in and get advice on how to get into India. What are the specific challenges from the people that you've met? What are the specific challenges that people are facing in getting into India, despite Mr. Modi's kind of very optimistic business-centric agenda?
I think the challenges have always been challenges of uncertainty in doing business, inconsistency, bureaucracy and red tape. These are the regular challenges that you hear about. But apart from that, the country is one, it's full of paradoxes. The north of India is different from the east, the west is different from the south. So I think the challenge, you're working with more than 20 different cultures and consumer and customer preferences. I think the challenge of operating, marketing and selling a business in India is very, very hard.
Speaking of marketing, now you're in charge of marketing this particular event. I suppose particularly since Mr. Modi's election and India's growth in the last few years, I suppose it's been a cakewalk, very easy for you to market something like this. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
So in terms of marketing the event, our audience is students, London Business School and other universities, of course academics, we've got some prominent academics here who've attended, and external professionals. So actually, compared to last year we had the same conference, and the theme was, is India still relevant? Because there was this air of negativity about India. But since Mr. Modi has come on board and he's leading the country, there's a lot of positive messages coming out of India. In fact, his whole election proves that the electorate wants progress. And it's from a marketing perspective, I think the challenge for us has been to explain to a Western audience why, given that last year India was facing all these challenges, what's different now. But most people who are in the space, for example, we've got companies here who help UK businesses go to India, and they've been very excited about it. And the fact that the conference covers many sectors, so we have keynotes from healthcare, Bollywood, banking.
What kind of interest have you had from companies here? I mean, give me a few examples of the kind and scale and variety of companies that have come on board and want to engage with India, and what specifically are they looking for?
So I won't give names, but we've had a few of our attendees come from companies that provide high-tech solutions to issues. So, for example, there's somebody here who's looking at the healthcare sector and can provide big data and analytics to improve the service delivery in healthcare. And there are others here who can do this, who are interested in banking and financial services. But there's a lot of interest for UK businesses to go to India, because India is a massive market. As Muthu said, it's a country of paradoxes, but it's a huge market, 1.2 billion population. And if the government creates investor-friendly and business-friendly policies, it's fantastic for the country. So from that perspective, this conference has brought some people in who are quite interested in India.
Now, an event like this is also an opportunity for people to network, to exchange ideas, and crucially, to hear from business icons. Now, an event like this is also an opportunity for people to network and to exchange ideas, and also crucially to hear from business icons and to be inspired.
What India does, India is produces about 1,200 films a year into different languages. There are about 800 producers. There are 139 million pay television homes. So there are about 6 DTH operators, 8,000 cable operators. Market is very, very fragmented. So the US media companies were looking to expand into India, and they wanted to have a vehicle which can be their vehicle to get into India. So I got the plan, what they wanted, that how do we consolidate and do the first studio model. Somebody wanted to create the first studio model. And when I heard Leo Henry saying that this is what everybody wants to get into it, but nobody got his hand around it, I refused his check, but it gave me food for thought. We made a business plan that how do we become the first true global studio of India. And when I made the plan, we required about $150 million. And my company was only producing EBITDA of $5 million that time. So how do we raise that 150 million? Either the family had a choice, either I sell a big stake to major companies like Liberty or TCI, who had come to me and they had raised some money for investing into India, or we do it ourselves. So we thought that we'll do it ourselves, we'll raise this money, and we raised that money on AIM, $150 million, and that's how Eros became the first true studio model of India. we do about 60 to 80 films a year now. We have grown 20x since 2005. We are at 100 million EBITDA today, from 5 million EBITDA. We are doing 60 to 80 films a year. We have a library of 3,000 films. The nearest competitor is Disney. Disney does about 6 to 10 films a year, and the library size is 100. Then is Viacom and Warner Brothers. So all the major players, which are Hollywood players, there are 5 to 6 studios, and there is room for 10 studios. So you will see in the next 10 years, 1,200 films will be controlled by about 10 major studios in India. India is, entertainment industry is standing at about $18 billion, growing at 20% CAGR. Now, actually, the journey has just begun. The next journey is how do you become 10x in the next 5 years?
You're addressing a conclave for people interested in doing business in India. What are the challenges in taking India to the world as chairperson of Eros International, Mr. Lulla?
I think the challenges were in the 80s and 90s. That's it. I think I'd never found any challenge after that, taking India to the world, because everybody saw India as the biggest emerging market, and the biggest growth is going to come out of India, and which is now is the time to invest in India. India is going to go places with the 1.2 billion consumer in India, and with the Prime Minister like Modi and the government, the initiatives they are taking, it's going to be a very friendly atmosphere and very investor-friendly atmosphere to invest into India.
Kishore Lulla there, the executive chairman of Eros International. Another prominent speaker today was the head of one of India's largest healthcare companies, Dr. Preetha Reddy. What are the top 2 things that foreign investors can learn about doing business? Let's talk about specifically your sector.
I think all our investors who've invested with Apollo, and this has been, I think, over 19 years to be precise, have done very well. You know, their return on equity has been on par with with the global standards. They've made 17%, 20% return, which I think they're very happy with. The lessons to be learned with India is that you need to be there for the long haul. And investors who have invested in India and, you know, who are prepared to wait it out and who are there for a while have done very well. There's a certain group of, you know, private equity or investors who are there for a very short term. And I think some of them might, you know, not find the environment conducive enough, or not been able to come out making the kind of returns they want to. And I think this is because India was a very closed economy. You know, there was the license Raj, there's an attitude of licensing and processes, and that's changing. And 10 years down the road, it might be much quicker, faster for returns if they want to be there short term. Yeah. But for the long-term investor, I think India is a good country to be in.
How have things changed in the short time that Mr. Narendra Modi has been in office? Have you, as a business person, seen a sea change, or is it a more gradual change since he's come into office?
You know, I think change will have to be gradual. It's definitely, the euphoria is definitely there. Mr. Modi has visited many countries. People are conscious of the fact that India is a country now which wants to make a difference, which wants to make a change, which is going forward. And I think that has been good. The actual change in the way, you know, the policies are, government has to function, it has to go to parliament, it has to go through the process. So I think it's too quick to say that. But the thought process is in the right direction. You know, if they want to encourage manufacturing in India because it's going to provide jobs, I think that's a good thing to do. If they want to encourage investment in India and try to, you know, help them overcome the hurdles, I think that's a good thing, which is happening. The power sector, again, they're trying to see how can we make it more efficient, access to fuel.
Open to business.
You're seeing, a lot of announcements, at least in the defense sector. The current budget, the allocation for the defense sector was large. So, I mean, we're seeing a shift, definitely, at least there's some action, there's some activity which business people are excited about.
So today, the benchmark for a bank like ours is not just another bank. And there are some great banks in the world, they're still surviving. But the best part is the benchmark is actually today product companies, technology companies, e-commerce companies, because a bank has to think future. People call it digitization, they call it like, digital banking, like paperless money transfers. But the fact of the matter is that a bank like ours has that opportunity to do it in India. Late entrant, but we can do. We can digitize banking here. We can create low-cost transactions because we got fantastic technology in our country. Very low-cost country. We can build volume. We can create every household in the country. We can bank them today. With the new government, which is aspiring to create subsidy transfers directly and not through like many structures and many levels or transfers where there is loss of subsidy, but direct transfers, a bank like ours can make a fantastic difference. We had 277,000 megawatts of commitment on green energy. And these are serious players, some of the best renewable energy players in the world who are willing to come to India and invest in renewable energy. So a bank can make a very big difference in public contribution, in entrepreneurial contribution, by building bench strength, by building talent, and building, enterprising ideas. I cannot invest in coal and some of the other attendant issues, but I can invest in renewable energy. So today our bank is like rank 1 on renewable energy in the country, and we can do wonders because India needs that, to reduce its dependence on oil, to be able to become self-sufficient, and therefore renewable energy plays a very big difference.
Right, so we have Mr. Nicol Nayar from the Side Business School at Oxford University, an MBA student who's participated in this conclave today. Now, Mr. Nayar, if you can first of all tell me, why did you decide to take part?
So I've been working in India before I came to Oxford, and I want to go back to India and continue working in the country. Also because the way the country is growing at this point, everybody wants to go back there. So this conference was one of the finest conferences I've seen, at least available in UK, that is bringing some very good speakers who understand Indian market and is presenting the picture in the right manner. So I was curious to learn from them and understand what the opportunities are. They spoke about regulations, they spoke about challenges. So it was really an opportunity to learn from people who are doing business in India. I'm intrigued. I mean, you're going to one of the finest business schools in the world. Do you intend to return to India? And how would, the information that you've gathered here today, how would that help you when you do return? So returning to India is a part of a larger plan, so it's not one conference that helps or doesn't help people making that decision, but it's just that once you're interested in a particular subject, like at this point it's India, all these conferences add value in some way or the other. Like I met a speaker who's doing work in social entrepreneurship in Delhi that told me about what his business is. Then there's another person who spoke about wind energy and how they have a different business model to grow infrastructure in the country. And we also heard from the High Commissioner who spoke about the budget and its implications on businesses. So these are very valuable insights for business students wanting to look at going to India. So therefore, I think it just adds up, and these conferences add a lot of value in terms of knowledge, in terms of network, in terms of just making the opportunity or making the proposition of going back to India more attractive through opportunities that they're explaining.
So we've got more participants of this conclave, Sakshi and Preetha, both students at the prestigious Cass Business School at City University, London. Yes? Okay, thank you so much for speaking to us, ladies. But first of all, tell me, why have you decided to take part in the conclave today? Preetha, first you.
Well, I have been studying in UK for 2 years now. Looking at the job scenario, it's best for me, I think, to go back to India. And with also the job scenario in India and the kind of career that I want to pursue, having my own business, being an entrepreneur, is one of my dreams. So it was great to have an insight. I expected that it would be great to have an insight on what people who come here think about entrepreneurship in India. So that was one of the main reasons that I chose to come in here.
And do you also actually plan to return to India after you've completed your studies?
Yeah, because seeing the job scenario, as you just mentioned, because it's not a very welcoming scenario for Indians out here, and probably like because we do have the visa issues and stuff like that. And plus, I think I want to go back into my country and work there and like do something of my own. Like as he mentioned today, that once you're an entrepreneur, like the feeling that you get is just divine. So something like that. I mean, I want to do that. And like I belong to my dad is into like a family business. Okay. So we come from a background like that. So I want to set up something on my own just like he did. Right. So that's why
But not go into the family business?
I don't mind going into that, but then, we are into real estate, and I don't think India is a very women-centric market as far as real estate is concerned. I mean, I'm going to be very limited out there because obviously there are some barriers that you have. And plus, I think I'm doing finance because that's what I like. So I want to probably set up my own consultancy and stuff like that.
What is the significance and what is the importance of having events like this, and how does it correlate, do you think, to India's growth as this economic superpower?
Well, first of all, it is about information transmission. So really, if one can get an idea from people on the ground from India, but also in a balanced way, rather than someone who's selling the idea, because they may have vested interest in selling the idea. So I think balanced, objective reporting, information transmission is ever so important so that people can then make up their own minds. Does a country look attractive? Would they like to invest? What is really happening on the ground? And hear anecdotal experiences like we have today from the people on the ground with a lot of experience. That I think is fascinating, and I think it's a very worthwhile day, quite frankly.
Specifically speaking, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, first of all? What are the opportunities that are available in India, particularly if you're investing from the UK, if you're traveling from the UK, and what are the specific challenges that exist, do you think?
Well, the macro story on India is fabulous. The demographics, the journey upwards, it's a catch-up, the economic journey of catch-up, which will unfold, I believe, over the next 20 to 25 years. The challenges, as always in India, is about execution. So the big picture is hugely attractive. The problem, as always with India, lies in the fine detail in getting things done in the execution. That, in a nutshell, is my view.
So there we go, a lot of interesting ideas and thoughts about why and how you can tap into the India success story. Yes, there are challenges, but the opportunities far outweigh them. The overriding message of the day, however, is that while the opportunities are similar to the ones that existed 20, 30, 40 years ago in other parts of the world, exploiting and tapping into these opportunities in India today requires a very 21st century, very 2015 form of thinking. My name is Viji Alles for UKAsian.